You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and today I am at the Peax headquarters with Brice Bishop, owner, president, mastermind of Peax Equipment.
Yeah. None of those things.
Founder.
But founder.
Can we do that?
Can do that. That's okay. Founder is appropriate.
Am I embarrassing you, Brice? So, folks, if you're listening to this podcast, you might want to watch it, at least the beginning, because we're at the headquarters here in Bozeman, Montana, in between hunts right now, and got some time to kill. We stopped down here. We're going to do a little showroom tour. Walk through here a little bit, talk a little bit with Brice about some of the products that Peax has come out with, and maybe even some products in the pipeline that are on the way.
Sure.
And
we can pull the curtain back. Yeah,
that's right. And talk a little bit about this brand and this company if you haven't heard of it in much detail. We'll get into it. I think it's kind of surprising what Peax has exploded into in such a short window of time, especially considering that so much neon green is part of the brand.
Dude, the color is awesome. Just ask Lampers what he thinks about it.
I know. It's certainly not our typical earth tone type colors. You know.
Well, think about Mountain Ops is not an earth tone either. Got their orange color.
They each have their own, but I kid. I know. I love the brand and what you've built here. I want to talk to you a little bit about how it's come to be. It's pretty remarkable. Yeah. I was talking to you before we started the podcast about how what you've done in a short period of time growing this company. You've done it on the backbone of just a few products.
Yeah.
That's remarkable because a lot of times companies, they have a whole suite of things, and here you are just selling truck and pole.
Well, I listen to podcasts like everybody else does all the time. Yeah. And Mark Cuban, I don't know what podcast he was on, but he was talking about one of the reasons that most startups fail is that they actually try to go too fast, too soon.
Too big, too fast.
And they expand their SKU line way before it's actually ready to be expanded. And so he talked a lot about like taking your core products and really penetrating the entire marketplace with those core products. And that as you do that, the growth will come when it's ready, right? Like too many people, they 20, 30 different SKUs, and then their messaging is unclear. Mm-hmm. They can't really connect with their audience because people are like, well, they got this product or that product, but I've never heard of them, so I don't have any brand loyalty yet with this company.
Yeah.
And when you just really focus on just a few products at a time and strategically add them as your brand awareness grows, it's just a better growth model. So we really took that to heart when we were kind of building our business strategy around, focusing on the hunting space of, we just want to get one really solid product that we can penetrate as deep into the marketplace as we can, and then strategically add from there as we were ready to.
Yeah, because let's talk real quick about the products that you do have. You have the trekking poles.
Yep.
We've been using those for, I think, 4 years now.
Yeah, about 4 years.
And you have a couple different models.
Yep, 3 models.
And the kind of the innovative part of the poles was the carbon fiber upper, the 2 sections above are of carbon fiber, and then which gave you that some strength, stability, and weight to weight, kind of an ideal. But then the bottom section you chose to do in aluminum.
Yeah.
And a couple of other trekking pole companies had done something similarly, but not in the hunting space.
Right.
And you were able to bring that to market at a very competitive price as well.
Right.
And so that was the first kind of product that you came to the table with. and it was much needed. And I think a lot of hunters were happy to spend their money on a hunting company that supports hunting, conservation, all that kind of stuff that has our back, rather than spend it on like, you know, your typical REI brand mountaineering, climbing, which half the time is anti-hunting and doesn't really support our community.
Right.
So I think people were eager to put their dollars there, but they also maybe didn't realize how important trekking poles were.
Yeah.
You know, 3 or 4 years ago, I was still trying to convince people they needed a trekking pole.
We still get people all the time that are like, I was so anti-trekking pole for so many years, and then they tried it, and they're like, man, I should have done this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever.
Yes.
They said I was saved my body the last 5 years.
And at this point, what's wild with trekking poles is we use them. They're so versatile because we use them to pitch our tarps.
Yeah. We
use them, you know, for the hiking aspect. I use them now to gut animals and skin them, especially when I'm solo. Moose, caribou, like elk, deer, all of them, you know, using the wrist strap around the legs and having 2 poles as a cross member and jacking it up. Dude, it's so nice. Lampers was like, we should have done this years ago.
I know. When you told me about that, I'm still blown away that you guys even thought about trying to use them in that.
It's so stable and so helpful. So that's a podcast and a film series. We'll get into that. Then we use the trekking poles in the new prototype teepee, which is pulling back the curtain a little bit.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for you anyway.
You're really good at leaking things out.
I guess I'm like, dude, I'm using it, folks. And so, the teepee has up above, there's the cross members. You can utilize your poles. You're packing them anyway.
Right.
Throw them up there in the peak of the teepee.
Yep. And
it's remarkable how the teepee, a lot of teepees, you got the center pole.
Yep.
You stake it down tight.
Yep.
And they sort of, especially sil nylon, has a tendency to sort of sag a little bit.
Right.
And get loose, you know. And wow, you throw those trekkers up in there and you as cross members.
Yeah.
Like creates a little X. So you got the center pole and then the cross members, and that teepee expands outward and gets taut. Yep. Really tight, and the walls stay tight. And then when the wind comes, it just sort of, it's almost like a freestanding dome in a way, and the wind just bucks the wind.
Well, that cross brace just stabilizes that wall, right? It just doesn't allow it to cave in with the wind like a traditional teepee would. So, that was one of the biggest problems we were trying to solve with a traditional kind of teepee pyramid style tent is those high winds and snow loads. Mm-hmm. And those cross members just brace the walls of that teepee in a way that just, like you said, it's almost like a traditional freestanding dome structure.
It is so versatile too, because now that you got your trekking poles in the peak of the teepee, we literally look like, a homeless encampment under a bridge in San Francisco, hanging our stuff up in the rafters. Like,
I know.
Like we're even talking to you about maybe some attachments to hooks or something where we can actually even get more, but it's so stable and it can handle so much load. We're throwing boots and jackets and rain gear and everything, sweats, wet socks, gloves, everything off of those poles. And those trekkers are so high into the peak that everything gets hot and dry.
Yeah, this fall, Mark Livesey, myself, and Kym went on an elk hunt together, and we got stuck in a storm that was like almost 24 hours of just solid rain. Mm-hmm. And we came back just soaked. Mm-hmm. And we hung all of our gators up there, put our pants up there, turned the stove on, and by morning, everything was just dried out.
Because what I've been doing is I've been creating sort of using my tripod. Right. I set that thing up kind of close to the stove, get it up in the air so I can hang things off of it, maybe 2 tripods with a string across it or a trekking pole resting there, and we hang some things. But it's like we always had to build some sort of scaffolding system to do it.
Yeah.
Now we crawl inside the Peax prototype, and you just start hanging your stuff, and there's so much room. It's so efficient.
Yeah.
So that sort of surprised me. We talked about this when you first came to Ryan and I with your teepee, which your first tent design you came up with sucked really bad.
Well,
and it wasn't even a teepee. It was more like 2 trekkers.
Yeah, it was.
And
I mean, that one's still kind of sitting out there on the shelf right now, but
and it has its potential.
It does.
But then the teepee came along, and we were like, same kind of thing. Like it wasn't there yet, and we had mentioned to you, why bring, like, unless you're going to do something totally innovative that isn't just already out there, you know, what value are you bringing above what other competitors are already making?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what are you going to do to improve upon what's already there?
Well, I mean, same thing with our Gators, right? Like, so many people said, why are you making a Gator?
Yeah.
There's 100 Gator brands out there, and there's some really good ones.
The thing is, though, is Ryan and I had used them all, and we had complaints about every single one of them. Even our favorite ones, we were like, yeah, but it's this. If we could just get this fixed or that changed.
Right.
And the same thing with the teepee. Like, there's certain things that just bothered us on what we have. And it's like, man, if we could just get that little thing changed,
right,
man, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And we have this wish list. And then somehow or another, you've managed it.
I mean, I just think that's the great thing about startup brands in general, right? I mean, forget Peax. Just think about small, nimble companies that can take people's feedback, identify the problem, and go to work trying to fix it, find a solution for it. It's why America's so great, right? Because entrepreneurs aren't afraid to go try things and fix problems and take on the big competitors. And it's just, I mean, that's the spirit that we have, is like, hey, yes, a lot of these products already exist in the marketplace, but there are small pieces of those products that are failing the consumer that they're built for, and we want to solve that problem and make them even better. And we're trying to do that in every product that we bring to market.
Yeah, and there's been a few products where we're saying a lot of the gear that we use in the hunting space was designed for climbers, mountaineers, hikers, campers, not for hunters. And there's like the headlamp is a good example.
Right.
There are things that hunters need that are unique that mountaineers don't need.
Yeah, for sure.
And so often we end up with gear that we're using, but it's not well tailored to our activities.
Yeah.
That's where I think Sitka really performed well. They recognized the outdoor clothing industry, that the mountaineering companies were crushing them.
Yeah.
Crushing, you know, in garments that were really great. But they lacked for hunters because often they were too loud.
Yeah.
They might have been waterproof and warm and lightweight and all that, but they were just loud.
Sure.
Or you know, there was some other aspect, like the way the pockets were designed, or, you know, for a hunt, you can't get into it to pull out a game call or something, whatever it is.
Sure.
So they just kind of figured it out.
I mean, I think that's where this whole thing's evolved from, right? Is first in the apparel. Mm-hmm. It went from the old heavy wool hunting garb, flannel stuff, to adopting the mountaineering equipment and then adapting it to meet the needs of a hunter. Mm-hmm. I think that on the equipment side, that's where that evolution is taking place right now, where there's a lot of REI type brand equipment that guys go and buy because it's currently the best thing out there.
Yeah.
But now, you know, at Peax, we're trying to take the approach that we can take a lot of that equipment and build it specifically to accommodate the needs of a hunter, and just evolve the equipment side of the industry now. You know, the apparel side's there. Mm-hmm. I think some of the apparel's probably exceeded even what's in the mountaineering space now in some cases.
I agree.
But on the equipment side, we're still behind, and our goal is to bridge that gap. And
well, and I hate it that a lot of the equipment I have to go buy at a sort of a anti-hunting type establishment. You know, they got to waive their woke credentials and really stick with, hey, we're really about, you know, camping,
through hiking.
Yeah, and through hiking. We're not into this like killing and eating what you kill kind of thing.
Right.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about what do you attribute your success to from an entrepreneur perspective, and how the company has grown. But before we do that, I do want to let's go ahead and walk that showroom, and let's walk over. Let's talk about a few of the products that are out there that you have right now. Because like I said, the product line is not very deep at all.
Right.
But I feel like you've kind of taken over the space.
Yeah.
In the hunting world. So
I mean, this is where it started. Right?
Yep.
These will be a little nostalgia for you, but this is the original Sissy Sticks trekking pole that we built. And 3.5 years ago, I think, is when you guys went to New Zealand and took it with you and tested it out. It's got all the original design. We haven't changed anything on that pole at all.
That's wild.
It's just...
Because it's funny, I was climbing a hill I was climbing a mountain on the Wasatch, and I had just got back from Alaska with backcountry BC and beyond with Tanis and Doran. I was up there with Dustin Rowe. Yeah. We were hunting moose, and I'd left my Black Diamond Trekker poles up there, and I'd had them for like 6 years or something, crazy long time.
Right.
And so I climbed the mountain, and I did a little Instagram story, and I said, hey, I need a new trekking pole. What do you guys recommend? What's out there? And so I asked the audience, and a few members got in touch with me, including Ryan Bassham from Sitka, and he's like, you got to talk to this Brice guy. Yeah. He's a friend of mine. He's put together a trekking pole. And I was like, oh, Ryan. I was like, some guy coming out with his own trekking pole. I'm like, why would anybody buy his trekking pole over all the other companies out on the market that are creating trekking poles?
Right.
Like, what is he going to bring to the table that all these innovators haven't already come up with? And who does he think he is to make a trekking pole and bring it to this market? That was kind of what was going on. And you know me, I just said that to you over the phone as well.
Yeah, pretty blunt.
But
I think you said, yeah, I'll try them out, but I'm not going to promise anything. Right?
That's what I said. I'm like, I'll probably, if I hate them, I'm just going to tell you. I won't tell the world. But, you know, and I was really skeptical.
Yeah.
And then I got them, and, you know, and Ryan and I were going to New Zealand.
Right.
Which is, that place eats up gear.
Yeah.
It's some of the most gnarly. The Southern Alps in New Zealand are intense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a picture of them right there on the wall there. Right. Yeah. And that place is unbelievable. The mountains, the steep, the snow, the rock, the shale, like. Yeah. So we put these poles to the test, and I thought they'd break because you got the carbon fiber, you know, the aluminum bottom, and unbelievable. And Ryan and I both predicted that these were going to be a flop, right? And then we used them, and they didn't break, and they held their own, and they were nice and lightweight, and yet super stable. Because one of the things I noticed with the sort of the REI brands was, you get 100-pound pack on, and you're going down this technical stuff, and you lean all the way on it, and your pole snaps.
Well, that's how this whole project was born, right? Like, my brother Patrick and I were out hunting elk. We were 6 miles in or whatever, and I had a cheap pair of aluminum poles from, I think they were even from Walmart or something like that. And I did the same thing. We had an elk on. We were coming down. Just the wrong pressure at the wrong angle.
Snap.
Right in half. Right? 90 degrees.
Because almost all of them were coming out with carbon fiber, the whole pole.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Right. So we had a whole pack out where we could just talk about trekking poles, and if you could build one specifically designed for a backcountry hunter. And then I started tooling around. It was more of like a hobby at that point and just kind of a side gig. Like we weren't selling them. It was just something fun for me to do.
Right.
And then when we got it to the point where we thought it was legit, that's about the time when Bass M introduced me to you. And the timing was just perfect for you guys to go to New Zealand.
It seemed providential.
It did. It was.
I mean,
I still believe that.
I do too. It's like so crazy. And then when we felt comfortable promoting it, we just started promoting it.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, this is a great product. Go get it.
Right.
And then after mass sales happened and then it flooded the market and people got to use the pole, the return rate was, what is your return rate?
Oh, it's 0.2%.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's impressive, especially a first time product that you've been able to roll out something like this and have such wide satisfaction across the board. And great. I love it. This pole took off, and then you came up with the next pole.
Yeah. So the Elite pole is really just an upgraded version of the Pro, right? So it's got a extra extension grip for the handle,
which I wanted. Yeah. That was one of the first things I wanted.
Yeah, we redesigned the flip locks so that they were high density polyethylene lock, which is, instead of the reflective anodized aluminum, we went to this kind of matte finished black lock. The carbon fiber in the aluminum is a little bit upgraded on these poles than the Pro poles. We redesigned the basket. I remember one of the biggest complaints you guys always had was
the basket.
The basket's getting caught in the weeds and whatever, and just.
But you need a basket, or it just disappears in the mud.
Yeah.
So
we
also this.
Oh yeah, the screw-on tips.
The screw-on tips, the fact that this rubber blunt screws on, with the threads, and of course it only lasts so long because this gets eaten up over time. But this, when you're, especially on some hunts where it's a bit rocky and noisy, that kills you. Mm-hmm. But yet you want to sneak up on the animal.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with this push on is it sinks into some mud.
It just gets sucked.
And it sucks off and it's gone, or you lose it.
Right.
And so when you came up with this screw-on tip, I was like, heck yeah! I was like all about it. And then to be able to screw it on, and then to be able to walk where you don't hit those rocks with the tip,
right,
and make all that noise, you can just set it down. Something metal on rock, it's rubber on rock,
right.
And then you can sneak up, and we only screw them on, Lampers and I, when we're getting close. Yeah. And when you're climbing up a hill, I use it for spot and stock. So I'm a big fan of taking this pole and making it kind of short like this. And as you're going over sticks or rocks, or you're getting in close, you can really you have 2 points of contact all the time on the ground. So you do these acrobatic moves, and it's so much more stable. Whereas if I didn't have it and I was doing this,
right, and trying to carry a rifle
or a bow, usually it's my bow. So I got the bow in the hand, and I can I can put this over, and then I can pivot and really sneak along.
Yeah.
And I'm not bad with the one-legged squats. But Lampers too, he likes the cane setup. Yeah. Where he's like the old man with the little cane, and he's sneaking along with his little trekker, Me too. And it's crazy how versatile, once you start using a trekking pole, all the different things you can do with it. So talking about skinning elk, this is what we would do with the elk or the moose. Is you take the leg of the animal. You know how you have a buddy hold it up while you skin it? Mm-hmm. Well, you take the leg through here like this, like so. And
so this is the leg.
This is the leg of the animal.
Yeah.
And it's like this, and you just make these the same length.
Yeah.
And stick them in the mud. And you can do it a couple of different ways. You can do it like so,
And it just braces that leg up.
And these are different heights right now.
Right.
These straps, but it was crazy. Or rather than having them cross member like so, you have them hang down like that. So it actually works a little better like this, with the leg hanging off of it than setting atop it.
Yeah.
It just hangs in there and it sort of finds that spot. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on this.
Right.
And this is with rubber tips, but in the mud,
yeah, it just sticks.
it just sticks. And then you just jack these up. And we had that moose leg like in the sky.
Really?
Both of them, 2 poles on each leg. And then we just like peeled the whole skin back, everything.
Really?
Solo, working on our own, no hair in the meat, nothing. Flipped it out. And the legs are just jacked up. And that thing is like a moose leg. You're holding it up like forever. So, yeah.
I thought I've seen every way you could use a trekking pole. That's the first.
Dude, it works like
I've
unbelievably well. Like it'll shock you.
Crazy.
So the poles, you've come out with that now. Lampers wants the old man cane handle. Do we have that in the works? Is that behind the curtain?
There is a behind the curtain, Brian. There is a product that is in development that is going to satisfy old Lamper's desires. And,
I think that's hilarious because really I haven't seen a trekking pole company come up with the old old man cane handle. But I tell you, for us in hunting, we use your design, first of all, probably introduced us to this.
Correct.
Because this kind of has a cane handle. So we ended up using them in that way.
Yeah.
And it ended up being miles and miles with a pack that we prefer to hold the poles that way than traditionally like this or ever use the loop.
Right.
Now that I know to skin animals with it, I'm all about. Now that I can use it as a jack with 2 poles, because man, by the way, like if a guy jacks that thing up and is like getting it as high as he can, it's like I'm holding it. And then the other guy just locks it in place and lets go. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
And you would normally, to get it up there, you'd just be burning calories.
Right. So yes, I mean, we're trying to, evolve our product lines, right?
Yeah.
As the time is right. And so we feel like we've gotten kind of our ultralight model, the original Pros. We've got kind of an upgraded model of the Pros and the Elites that are really versatile. Both these poles are. We've got our Z poles, which are, our good buddy Corey Jacobson just loves the Z pole.
Yeah, we mock him relentlessly.
I know you
for
do.
Those poles.
But, for him and for that style, it's great. It's just snap button. They're tethered together. They collapse down 10 inches shorter than the other style. And for getting in and getting out, they're great, right? Yeah. And then they just this just pulls down, snaps in place, and then you can adjust it up or down, right? So for guys who are just about the hiking aspect, getting in and getting out.
Yep, super lightweight, collapsible.
Good pull still. And then, this new one that we're working on is kind of way outside the scope of these. It's more of like you said, mountaineering tool. It's gonna be more of a tool that can be used than just a trekking pole. So.
What's so fascinating to me is a lot of the company was built on this pole.
Yeah.
And
this is the foundation.
What's funny is that's not where I would picture a company being able to make a mark, is on a trekking pole.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, but you think about our space. If we would have tried to come out with an apparel line or a boot line or a backpack line or whatever, those markets are pretty well established and saturated, right? Like, what would have made us stand out in those markets? Probably nothing.
Well, that's the thing is, I guess what you did is you found a need, a deficiency in the market where there wasn't a sturdy enough, tough enough pole for hunters.
Right.
You found things you just, everything that was available that you were going through, you were just upset about.
Yeah.
And you saw that need and were like, here's a solution.
Right.
And it's subtle, actually.
Yeah.
The solution's not rocket science.
Sure.
But it was enough that it filled that that need.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, there was really there's no other brand specifically serving the hunting community as a trekking pole.
Yeah.
Right. Like they just,
for sure,
it's not out there. Mm-mm. And so the hunters were just resorting to, like you said, going and buying product from non-hunting brands that weren't supporting the community.
Yeah.
And so there was just a great opportunity for us to enter the industry. And
the other thing too was the price was so much lower for the value.
Yeah.
It was like, I couldn't believe how much value people were getting versus if they had gone out and bought something else at one of these brands that kind of hates you.
Right. Well, and that's a direct-to-consumer model, right? You take out the majority of the middleman.
Get rid of...
Right. Yeah. You can just offer products at a better price point and still make the same margin that somebody who's selling strictly retail does, and just give the consumer the break, the discount.
Yeah.
So... Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what you got. The Gator was like product number 2,
yeah,
right?
So the Gator was product number 2. We just came up with some new hang card packaging. We think it displays really nice. But the Gators were, another product that we're just like, how can you really improve on a Gator, right, from what's already out there? And
that thing is sexy.
Yeah, they are nice looking.
They are. They just.
But they're just beefed up everywhere, right? Like, double layer of protection down where your boot's at with 1000D Cordura fabric on the exterior, another layer of 300D on the interior, the Hypalon kick plate, which, this is the point where most Gators get worn out. Mm-hmm. You're kicking rocks, you're kicking sticks, you're kicking your other boots hitting it, ice, everything. Gators just get torn up right here. And so that Hypalon patch, that kick plate, really protects the Gator from just wear and tear right there.
Stitching.
The stitching. We started using a Dyneema thread throughout the entire Gator, and we haven't had a single Gator warranty claim on stitching when we switched to this Dyneema thread. Like, it's incredible.
Almost every competitor, many of them, the stitching is the part that has failed.
That fails on them.
They might have a great patch or heavy duty, and it's like, and then it just comes unsewn or it starts ripping down here or something.
Yeah. So that Dyneema thread was just a great choice, right?
The buckle.
Yeah. Before the buckle, even the bootstraps, like, we reinforced the bootstrap with Kevlar to run through the middle of it. You can kind of see the Kevlar fibers there.
I don't understand these other Gator makers where this thing is the part that fails. Right. The bootstrap.
Right. And so, we just knew that's got to be beefed up and reinforced. And so we thread it with, we found a Kevlar TPU strap that's got the Kevlar running through it. So, but my favorite part of the Gator, kind of like you said, is this buckle system up at the top, right? So it's both a cam lock and a gatekeeper. So when people
they have it adjusted.
You can adjust it, right? It actually locks in really tight. Usually you have to get your fingernail underneath there, but if people just want to use the cam lock, they can adjust the tension strap and then just cam lock it down where they want to, and that's easy. But if your tag end of your webbing gets pulled, it pops your Gator open. Mm-hmm. So what we decided is, thread it through. You can really lock it down to where even if your tag end gets pulled on something, it can't open that buckle, right? Yep. And then this is set at your tension already, so just the gatekeeper slides into the loop and then locks in place at whatever setting it's supposed to be at. And, so the versatility of that buckle is one great thing, but the other thing is, like, most buckle systems are permanently sewn into the Gator.
Yeah.
And so if you break one side, the side that's sewn into the loop,
we talked to some Gators who were like running dogs and stuff in New Zealand and chasing pigs, and they're like, we're running through the brush and we break buckles. Yeah. And they're like, what can I do? Here you just throw another buckle on.
Throw another buckle on. Yeah. So
it's impressive, how durable this thing is and how efficient it is. Another guy asked me the other day, he's like, does it collect a ton of moisture under your Gator? And it's like, no more than is normal, right? Because it is a waterproof insulating, but it breathes. Yeah.
And, kind of our cut, we really wanted to get that tight seal around the boot.
Right.
And so
when I cross cricks, I don't have to, I can just run across them in my Gators.
Yep. These Gators just do a great job of sealing out all that moisture from being able to get up underneath them and just keep yourself dry. So the reviews have exceeded what our expectations were on these Gators.
Because there's a lot of competitors in it. And I'd say in the last couple of years, a few companies have come out with a pretty decent Gator.
Sure.
And I've been impressed because for a long time, again, Lampers and I saw the need. We were in New Zealand, and I was wearing Gators, and they just got ate up in 2 days.
Sure.
And I put on another brand new pair, gone in 2 days. Wow. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I had used those Gators for 2 years, and in various conditions, and thought they were pretty good.
Yeah.
Not realizing there were some major weaknesses once I used them in a certain terrain. And that was really an eye-opener for me, because that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember going, gosh, you have to use the product through all the seasons and all the conditions and all the terrain before you find out that, there's a huge problem in this design, in this situation. And the Gators, too, we had a prototype, and similar thing happened. We came back from a trip, and we were like, Brice, in this certain condition, these things got ate up. You need a solution.
Yeah, I mean, and they had been perfect before that, right?
We thought we had a winner.
I know.
That was scary, actually.
I mean, it's just part of the development process, right? You just have to go through that stuff. But, I mean, it led to a solution, and we solved the issue.
It worried Ryan and I, because we were like, we thought when we said go buy these that we had put together we thought we were giving people good advice, and it wasn't bad advice. It's just that under certain conditions, with the rock being like glass, that caused a problem where it had a failure point. Sure. And then you guys went to the drawing board and fixed it real quick, and then
that was the fastest redevelopment.
Yeah.
But it was, we still, even those original ones, people just rave about the Gator.
Yeah.
Because of just how well they're built.
So again, why a Gator after a trekking pole? I remember talking to you going, really? You're going to make a Gator? There's lots of Gators. Why you?
I just think it was kind of that category, the next step in that same category of getting you from trailhead to your camp in the backcountry or hiking in the backcountry. It just kind of fell in line with that hiking category.
And I know Ryan and I were talking to you and saying, what's on the market right now, the best Gator isn't made by a hunting company.
Yeah.
And we feel like it should be.
Sure.
And sure enough, here we are.
Yeah.
I will stack this Gator up against any Gator on the market for fit, function, durability.
Yeah.
All of it.
And
price.
As you talk about fit, that we took a different approach where most Gator companies strictly do the sizing based off of boot size. But we do all of our sizing based on calf size.
Yep.
And
which is a major.
You get such a better fit. And then we've got kind of the reinforced spine that runs up the front of it. We get so many positive reviews that say, my Gator never fell down. Never. And that's the biggest compliment we could get, right? Because that was one of our biggest goals, is not only the durability side, but you're not enjoying the experience if you're constantly having to pull your Gators up, right? And if you're focused on what you're wearing instead of what you're hunting, it's not a good situation. So the fit has been just a huge selling point as well with these Gators, because people just are they're so comfortable. They never fall down. The fit's just perfect.
Yep.
So it's been great.
So the Gator, and then what is it? The headlamp, kind of the other big item.
Yep, the headlamp,
which you just came out with another improvement.
Yeah. So originally, actually, these ones still have the old one. So you can see, originally we just had this big green button,
right,
to turn it on and turn it off. It was micro USB charging. And we kind of upgraded all that. We upgraded the packaging a little bit, so it's got this It's really good, sleek presentation now, right out of the box.
Look at you.
Which that's important.
You got a Peax battery now.
Yeah, we went ahead and got Peax batteries. Same capacity, same performance, just Peax branded now. But these headlamps now have a
I like that.
Powered indicator, charging indicator on the side of them. So the button is illuminates. When you click it, it's green. When there's plenty of battery power, it turns red. When you get down to like 10% of your battery left, when you get to critical low, it starts flashing red now. So the headlamp has just been... And
it's got 8 more settings too.
Yep. So there's a feature in there that once you're in the wider red, we can look at one when we get back into the conference room. I can show you guys that. But you can triple click and then it'll cycle through 8 different settings. You can select the one you want. There's still the 3 white and the 3 red. But we did the USB-C charging instead of the micro USB.
There's some other products that never came to market. As you know, as you were developing things, you'd come to Ryan and I, and we would mess around with stuff.
Yeah.
And some of them really, really raw prototype type products. And then we'd come back and say, this sucks, or this is good, but not any better than what the other product is on the market that competes. And I don't even remember how the headlamp came into life. I know that Ryan and I complained about the headlamps on the market for hunting.
Yeah, I think that the biggest complaint that you guys had was the red light, right? Like on the other headlamps you'd been using, you're like, you can see right here, but you can't see your feet, or you can't see 10 feet in front of you, right? So that was kind of the catalyst, I think, that made us go, okay, can we build a headlamp now that's specific for a hunter and that accommodates those specific needs of a hunter? And so we did. I mean, I don't know how many prototypes of different designs and materials and shapes and lenses and everything that we gave you guys, and most of them came back and failed.
Some of them were pretty cool.
Yeah, some of them were out there, but
real futuristic.
Yeah, but they just didn't fit the overall bill, right? And so the criteria, I think, and the feedback that we got from you and Ryan on that was durability. Like, that's a massive issue.
Yep.
Battery life sucked.
That battery life needed to be such that you could go 10 to 14 days and not have to charge it once.
Right.
But it also needed to be rechargeable, as we've gotten away from carrying batteries and having batteries. Like, you have to buy them all the time.
Right.
But also, it's just, we have these extended expedition type hunts.
Sure.
And we just want everything to be rechargeable.
Yeah. So, and then I think the red light was number 3. Those are the
beam being able
and
to,
the beam, a super bright beam.
Super bright beam that didn't suck the battery in 1 hour.
Right.
I'm like, okay, Brice, here's your marching orders. Make this magic headlamp.
So those were really like the 4 development criteria that we had when we started.
What surprised me was, like, Zebra had a bright light that used like a CR2 battery or something like that, but it would like burn through that battery in a few hours. And so we would bring these things because they were like a spotlight. And when I was in New Zealand with Ryan, we got ourselves into, many times we got ourselves into some super sketchy situations. And one of them, we ended up coming down this canyon in the dark, both with tar, on our back, the meat, the hide, the whole thing, horns, plus camp. And we're literally navigating cliffs and boulders and a river. And we needed to be able to see 80 to 100 yards out there to see if we descend this cliff here, is there a way out, or are we now stuck in, like, between 2 cliffs? Because once you slide down this cliff face, there's no going back. You're committed. And I would climb up to these ridges and I would look with my really bright Zebra lamp way down there so I could pick our routes. And then I'd be like, we can't go that way. If we were to descend this, we'd get cliffed out, and then we couldn't get back.
Right.
Because there's no way, once we dropped our packs off a 30-foot cliff to the bottom, And then we'd like slide down. There's no bringing that pack back up.
Yeah, for sure.
Or ourselves. And so it was like, it was pretty sketchy. And having that bright lamp, and I remember being like, this thing's going to run out. So we just turn it on, and then I go back to the other lamp, and the other lamp was dying. And I already used my spare battery because we did so much night hiking that we didn't anticipate. No way to charge it up. Like all these problems with the tool.
Yeah.
So, and then hiking out in grizzly country, I got annoyed that all these little headlamps you get from the backpacking stores and that everybody typically use only goes out 15, 20 feet, really.
Yeah.
It's not super bright.
Right.
And then if you did run it on that, you use your batteries in a few hours.
Yeah.
And it just dims down.
Yep.
So all those things were a big deal to me. And I'm like, so when you actually came to the market with something that did that, I'm not gonna lie, I was really impressed. I was like, why aren't other companies making this?
Well, and we had a retailer, to be honest, that was kind of like really skeptical when we said we were coming out with a headlamp. Mm-hmm. One of our partners, and they're like, it's a headlamp, right? Like there's already great ones out there. It's no big deal. And
there's a lot of great ones out there,
and
without that hunter criteria,
right? And so we were like, well, you don't have to buy them, right? You don't have to sell them. We'll sell them. And I think they were shocked that when they placed their first order, literally in 24 hours, they sold them out completely.
Yep.
And they were begging us to give them more. And we were like, we don't have any more to give you. We sold them out ourselves, right? We had nothing left. And I mean, it's still today the one product we just cannot keep in stock. Like we get a batch in and literally within a week or two, they're just gone. I mean, they're going so fast. But I think it's just because, again, we solved a specific problem that hunters were experiencing that your average camper or hiker or whatever just doesn't have to deal with.
Well, the battery not having to be recharged was in having it last a long time at bright light.
Yeah.
Anything out there took like 8 double A's, and it was like you had to wear a box on the back and a big beam, and just all these problems. They were like halogen bulbs a lot of times. Like I said, the zebra light was bright and light, but ate those batteries like crazy.
Yeah.
And so I just saw all these gaps in what was out there, and part of my assumption was it can't be done yet. The tech doesn't exist. That's why it hasn't been made. And that wasn't the case at all.
I don't think that's the case. I think it's really the criteria of the user, right? Like nobody else has had to build a headlamp to meet the specific criteria that you guys gave us.
Right.
And so like even I remember when we built one and it finally was like, you guys were like, wow, this thing is lasting forever. Lampers was actually testing it. And I think on the white setting, on its lowest, setting, he got like 56 hours out of a single charge on the battery.
And you figure you use it an hour at night, an hour in the morning at max. It's a lot of days.
Yeah. And then we made some tweaks, and the next one we came out, like you said, like the battery didn't last as long, right?
Right.
It all had to do with the programming inside the circuit board and the way it draws amps out of the battery. And I'm not an electrical engineer,
right?
But
it took you talking to all your connections and engineers, and saying this is what we want for them to then finally tweak it and satisfy us.
Yeah.
But it just surprised me that other manufacturers hadn't pushed for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me too why other headlamps don't last as long.
One thing that I found, like back to what you were saying, a lot of people have looked at this lamp and they're like, "Oh, I've seen other lamps that look like this."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You don't understand how many iterations we went through in the prototype testing. There's lots of lamps that might look like this, or other lamps that look similar to some of the prototypes we were running."
Yeah.
But they're not anything like it. They're completely different. And so,
in addition to you guys, we worked with Stephen Drake on this project, and he had been running, I think, a Phoenix brand headlamps that looks very similar to it, and he'd been running that thing for years. And he's like, yeah, I'll run it, but I really love my Phoenix, which they make a great headlamp, obviously. And he came back and he was like, I'm shocked. I'm blown away at the battery life, the brightness, the red. Mm-hmm. Like we're calling it ultra red now because it's just like, it's just like,
yep.
And so he was just amazed at the performance of it.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. I'm pretty thrilled with how. So you bring this to market, right? And you launch it. Question for you. I had a little behind the scenes, but you had some trepidation leading into it. Tell me about what your worst case scenario kind of was, and then what the results were when you like.
I mean, it's just like any time we've launched a product, right? I didn't go out and raise a bunch of money to fund this business, right? Like I just self-fund it and we grow as we can. But, you're writing pretty big checks to get those purchase orders. And again, you don't know if this product's really going to be accepted in the marketplace or not. And it's an electronic. So, there's
many competitors.
So many things that can fail that's totally outside of your control, right? Like, electronics are just finicky sometimes. And so you're taking a massive risk on a product that potentially could have a massive issue and failure. And it was nerve-wracking to say the least.
But now you can't keep them in stock.
But now we can't keep them in stock.
And the feedback.
And the feedback's incredible.
Incredible.
Right. Like
so you have some trekking poles, some Gators, and a headlamp. It's like 3 home runs. 3 home runs, and what you did was not evolutionary. Like people had a Gator, people had a pole, people had a headlamp. So this brings me full circle. Like let's step away from this fan.
Yeah.
But what is it exactly that you would attribute your success to? Because you got 3 products now that were home runs that you've gone deep with in the marketplace and people really value.
It's people more than it is, any skill that I have. It's just being connected with the right people that help you along the way. I can't attribute any of our success to anything I don't think that I've done on my own. It's been the feedback from you and Ryan and Corey and Randy Newberg and Stephen Drake, that kind of feedback coming in from a lot of sources, coupled with guys like Bassam and Brinker and Jordan and Harry Lindsay when he was, working with us a little bit, and people that just had the expertise in the industry to kind of help me navigate through some of those places where I probably would have made big mistakes on my own. And help with some of the brand positioning and kind of the strategic launches of these products and having a voice in the industry to influence consumers. And I just think that it's so important to get yourself coupled with the right people. Because on your own, you're just going to make big mistakes. I talked with my good friend Mike Ellig, who used to own Montana Black Gold, Ripcord Rest, Tight Spot Quivers.
Yeah.
He was my first job in the hunting industry as a teenager.
Yeah.
I was in his shop packaging fiber optic pins in little display cases, and we were shipping them to dealers all over the place, right? Just trying to show off this new technology. And he was in here the other day. He came in and picked up 4 headlamps for him and 3 of his buddies. And he was saying, every time he started a new company, like what took him 15 years with Black Gold took him 5 years with tight spot quivers, and it took him 2.5 years with Ripcord Rest, right? And it was just because he had learned so much through that process, built those relationships, had the right connections, and it just came together for him, right? So for me, I attribute most of the success that we've had to the people around me.
I don't disagree with that, and I think that there's but that's a talent in itself. Being able to listen to other people, also gain their trust and have them contribute. Managing those kind of relationships and navigating them. That's a whole thing. But I'd also see a through line with each of these products.
Yeah.
You basically were able to investigate and figure out what's currently on the market and what's it deficient. What's the problem with the existing product? And then you tackled those problems and came out with something that fit, that answered it was a solution to all those issues.
Right.
And you did it with the poles, you did it with the Gators, you did it with the headlamp.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's funny because the market rewards you.
Yeah.
If you identify their pain points and what they're upset about, what is the problem with the existing product, you identify those things and you find a solution, sure. They're like, thank you, I'm going to buy that. They really do. And that was I guess that's a team effort from everybody being able to, but your commitment to finding out what the problem is and finding a solution, and we've tried it. You've tried it with some other products that haven't rolled out because couldn't really improve it or figure out how to get it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been a handful of other potential products that we wanted to launch that we just put on the shelf because we just couldn't get it to where it needed to be. And right now you look at our product line, you think it's kind of disjointed, right? Trekking poles, Gators, headlamps, they don't really work together that well as a system.
Yeah.
But what you're going to see over the next 3, 5, 7 years is that our product roadmap's being built in a way that all these products start to work together. And, I mean, you already mentioned it with the teepee that's coming out, right? How the trekking poles integrate, not as the center support, but in a different way to solve other problems. So then you're going to have a system that's working together, right? Our trekking poles with our teepee, right? You're going to see that starting to happen with lots of products that are in the process of being developed.
Yeah, you have a lot of products where you can have 3 in 1. Yeah. Like a tool that does, where they say, where you can get rid of redundancies. Instead of having 3 separate items you backpack in with, you have one that can do all 3 things. Right?
Yep.
That starts to really build in efficiencies in a system for a guy like me who's going into some really remote places. And, what I like is a lot of what Peax is doing and what your goal has been is a lot of the stuff that's traditionally been kind of where there's hunting companies that come out with hunting clothing.
Sure.
There's gloves, clothing and all that. But the hard gear, like a headlamp, a pole,
right.
A lot of that hasn't been built for the hunter in the hunting space. Nobody went for the hard goods.
Right.
I pretty much got to go over to Backcountry Supply or go into REI to get a lot of my backpacking equipment. And in that space.
Sure.
And seeing you come out with this, and instead of going and buying like a black diamond headlamp, now people can buy this. Yeah. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say, speaking to all the entrepreneurial type guys out there who are keen to kind of start their own business or go down their own road? My buddy Graxaw, he's cranking out those boot dryers, and he's got game bags, and he's coming out with some new stuff. Goat Knives, our buddy over Travis Nowotny. I see those knives.
He just came out with a new one. I just saw Brady Miller post something about a new goat knife that just came out. Yeah.
But so what is your advice to entrepreneurs out there?
I think most guys give up way too early. I think they have an idea and they start tinkering around, and they hit kind of that first roadblock, that first, stumbling block that they'd have, and they just go, oh, I guess I can't do it. Instead of continuing to just figure it out little by little. And I read another article yesterday about a guy who he had a full-time job, but he really wanted to do something on his own, right? He hated the grind of going to the office every day and just being a slave to the man.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just want to get out of this. And so he just decided he was going to give 1 hour a day to whatever his side hustle was, right? And he didn't care how far he got in that hour, but he was going to commit to that 1 hour a day. And he did it. And he just, over time, that 1 hour just kept producing. And all of a sudden, this side hustle was big enough that he was like, I don't need to go to this 9-to-5 job anymore. I've got a business now that all I've been doing is spending an hour a day on that's able to support me. And I just think people just give up too early. They just don't see it through long enough to see success.
I asked this Levi Morgan. I did a podcast with him maybe a year or two ago. Can't remember, but he said something to me that I just has always stuck with me ever since. And he said the same thing. People quit. He said most people quit just right about when they were about to succeed.
Yeah.
When they were right about at the getting over the hill. And he told me how he had been shooting bows for years. It's an old podcast. You go back and listen to it. It's well worth the listen. I love everything coming out of Levi Morgan.
Yeah.
And he's like, he told me how he was just grinding at shooting bows and trying to make it, living at it, and his wife and kids. And, you know, it was a struggle for the family.
Yeah.
And he wasn't making any money. And he told me he almost quit. He was just about to quit. Just call it. And he's like, no, just stick it out just a little bit longer. I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to do that. And right about the time he was done. He was going to throw in the towel. He doesn't. And then he got this huge win.
Yeah.
And then after that, now he's Levi Morgan and everything's history, you know?
Right, yeah.
And you look at Michael Jordan getting cut from his basketball team, like in high school. If he'd just been like, well, I guess that was it.
Yeah, I just saw a quote.
There's no Michael Jordan.
I just saw a quote from him the other day that was, and I can't remember the numbers, but he said, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot X amount of times, and I failed this many. And it was a high percentage failure, right? But he didn't allow that to stop him. He just would get back in there the next game and keep playing. And success comes a little bit at a time. Yeah, piece by piece.
Yeah, I think that's wise, that people just quit too soon. I know it's true on a hunt. Like,
for sure.
A lot of guys have a 10-day hunt and they're like, you know, and the last day of the season is on day 10, and yet they go home on day 9.
Right.
And how many times have Ryan and I, like right about the time you want to quit, we don't, and we win at the very last hour on the last day. I mean, it's just like
it just happens.
It's just that's just a testament to tenacity and refusing to quit.
Yeah.
What about companies that have grown to, you know, a decent size? They got a product or two. How do they grow to the next level? How do they like really get beyond that phase? Because you have broke through these barriers, you know, these ceilings that a lot of people hit.
My way was not probably the right way. Just don't pay yourself, right? That's how I did it, right? I just don't take a paycheck, and I just put everything back into it. I've seen in my other career, I guess you'd call it, my other life, I've seen businesses grow too fast, right? And they can't keep up with the growth. And I've seen businesses go out and raise a bunch of money and not know how to spend it, and that was a death to the business as well. It's hard to grow a business from the ground up with no outside capital, no ability to really take home the big paycheck that you used to get. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that the best thing that they can do is make sure that their business model from a financial standpoint allows them to reinvest back into the business. If they're running on such razor-thin margins that they can't reinvest back in, the only thing they can do is buy the next round of product.
Yeah.
You can't diversify, you can't grow, you can't build it. You've got to have a sound enough business model that the business is going to produce the money needed to reinvest into new product and R&D. I mean, I spend way more time than I should in spreadsheets looking at numbers and forecasting the future and looking at how are we going to cash flow the next product. And
part of that is dreaming, which keeps you motivated.
Yeah, it is.
What could be.
What could be, right? And I also think that a lot of brands don't look far enough into the future, right? At least small brands. Mm-hmm. They have a product that they're selling and they're like, it's going pretty good.
And they don't plan
for the next thing. They don't plan for the future. Like we have a 10-year plan that we've already built.
When you say let's go back to that, because one of the things, I've been part of a lot of different companies. I was with Mountain Ops when Casey and Jordan were selling stuff from their basement and their wives were doing all the packaging.
Yeah, man, dude, I was there too.
It was like,
my wife was so glad when I got out of the living room and the garage.
Yeah,
right?
like I remember back when it was just, some of these companies were just nothing. They had one product.
Yeah.
And then they become this giant.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have seen is there are just people out there like your Steve Jobs types that anything they touch turns to gold.
Sure.
And there are people who that have somehow figured out, cracked the code.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you did different than a lot of companies is, I guess the through line for most of these that I've seen succeed is they were they had connections. They developed relationships with people who knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And they followed the advice of that person. So they basically got themselves mentors.
Right. And I had to do that the same, right? I'm really strong on the finance side, the operations side, the logistical side, like all of that stuff. But I'm not an expert marketer. I'm not a visionary. I don't have any influence whatsoever. So there's areas that I'm strong and there's areas that I'm weak. Right. And I had to go seek out. I mean, Ryan Bassam was one of the first guys that I reached out to. We go to church together, so that made it a little easier. But I just said, can I take you to breakfast one day? Mm-hmm. And I just took him to breakfast and said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. What would your advice be? I didn't ask him, is it a good idea or not? Mm-hmm. I had already decided it was a good idea, and he wasn't going to change my mind on that. So the advice I asked him was, how would you move forward with this? What would you do?
Yep.
And so he gave me little bits of advice, and then that connection led to you,
me.
And that connection led to Brinker, and that connection between you and Brinker led to Jordan, and all these people that I just started to get connected with that had expertise in the areas that I was weak. And then Ryan Lampers came on board with you in New Zealand, and and then I got to give a lot of credit to Corey and Randy. Even before you, they were the very first two that I gave trekking poles to, and they broke them right away. And they didn't like a lot of things about them.
Right.
But it was all the people that have the experience or have the ability to go out and provide feedback. And I don't know, I think I just got really lucky and got people to say yes when normally they might say no, or people that had good relationships with somebody else that they trusted.
I like your humility. That's one of the reasons why we get along so well. I honestly, I think that you're not giving yourself enough credit, but I do see how you've brought all these people together. You recognize someone that has talent or skill. You're able to recognize that, but also gain their trust and then work together with them. And you put together a team, basically. Yeah. And I saw the same thing. Jordan Harbison at Mountain Ops, him and Casey and stuff, they would put together a team of people that were good at this and good at that and I would read about Steve Jobs and he would do similar things. And I think that sort of, if like you said, you have your skills and you're strong in this space, but you're really weak in these other areas. And every human being is kind of the same.
Sure.
And so if you can get someone that's really good, like your opposite, and get that person on your team, and then you fill in this gap. I mean, you start to fill in. It just seems like that was.
Well, I also think one of the team is number one. I think you got to have the right people in the right positions to help you. But I think number two is you have to be willing to learn new skills as an entrepreneur. You have to.
Yeah.
Like I had 0 graphic design skills.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the money to go buy or pay a graphic designer to do a lot of things. So I bought Adobe Illustrator. I watched a crud ton of YouTube videos. I still do when I want to do something and I don't know how to do it. I just go to YouTube and say, how do you make a neon glowing effect?
I hear you. I taught myself how to run a camera, how to edit video, how to make movies, like everything from the technical aspect, but then how the theoretical aspect between telling stories.
Yeah.
I mean, I just taught myself as I went. Podcasting, same thing. I'm like, okay, what do I like that works with these guys? Copy that, improve on it, but then listen to more and more people that are good at podcasting and pick their brains on what works and what doesn't. Yeah. All that stuff is you do have to be willing to learn. I feel like as a business, I learned this when I was in tech, before I started Gritty and accounting, finance stuff, audits. It's like, if you don't adapt, you're gone. Yeah. I was working for like Blockbuster Video as one of my clients, and then I got Nike over here, and you can just see the companies who were just dying slow deaths. Yeah. And then the innovators who were coming out with new stuff over here and growing.
Well, there's that.
And if you don't adapt, you're gone.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Moneyball.
Yeah.
There's that scene in there where the general manager is telling Brad Pitt that we've done it this way for X amount of years. You think you can come in and do it better and different, and who are you? And he just says, adapt or die.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's his response.
Right.
Adapt.
That takes cojones.
And it takes cojones, and it takes the willingness to learn something new.
Well, my podcast had done really well. I was first to market, early in the hunting space.
Sure.
I think I brought a lot of new ideas and innovation in terms of guests and how they were interviewed.
Yeah.
How I would grow my network of connections. How the sort of introductions I would provide on the show. I kind of did things that nobody had done. I was the first one to sit at a trade show and interview 20 people in a day, day and a half, Things like that where you had all these people centralized in one place and I could get them all out at once and drop all these shows.
Right.
And people this is before social media really you had Facebook, Instagram was kind of new. People didn't know a lot of behind the scenes or had these long conversations with people that they saw on TV.
Yeah. Right.
So it worked really well, and then it got flooded. And a lot of people have a podcast, and a lot of people, every business has one. And it was like, I was always interested in filming and telling the stories, but I started to look around going, you have to adapt as a media content creator. Yeah. You have to always get better. And so I took those years where the podcast was doing well. I was already working on film.
Sure.
And I sucked at film for a long time.
Yeah.
When I look back at some of the old stuff, it's cringy. But I got better and better, and I figured out what I liked and what worked for me and what the audience seemed to respond to. And I evolved at the same time. And then I wanted to enter into a market that had a high barrier to entry.
Sure.
Filmmaking of hunts, the type that I do, there's a high barrier across the board.
Yeah.
Not anybody can just go out and copy that.
Right.
But a lot of people can just go and interview people and do a podcast. That's a low barrier to entry market.
Sure.
And so I felt like I had to adapt and insulate myself against, failures or the brand dropping off. Like, you have to provide something that's different, innovative, and high skill. And that took a lot of hours of work, just work.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other reason that people fail is they just don't like work, right? Yeah. They want the quick get rich quick scheme,
right?
And that doesn't really exist in the world. It just is
not fun.
Yeah.
Like,
if you can't find joy in the work you're doing, even though it's work,
then
you shouldn't be doing it. I don't come to Peax every day and just go, oh, this is the easiest fun thing to do. Sometimes it's a grind, and sometimes it's a stress, but I still have joy in doing it.
How many years ago did you start the endeavor? Really, like the seeds of it.
Yeah, 2018 was kind of when I started.
So now it's 2022.
Tinkering around. 2019 is when we launched Sissy Sticks. And then 2020 is when we rebranded as Peax. So it's been 2 years as Peax.
So it's been a lot of years, a lot of grinding and working. Yeah. Standing back and looking at it now, how do you feel about everything?
I mean, I'm super stoked with where we're at as a brand, right? If you talk to my wife, she could tell you how many times I came to her in the earlier stages and was like,
I don't know.
Probably just need to go get another job. I probably just need to go back into corporate America and go back into
it was easy money.
Yeah.
I made good money.
Right.
This is
I was
harder.
making really great money in that industry. And sometimes it was hard to keep coming in and doing it every day, right? But now we've kind of hit that level where it's like, okay, the business is rolling. There's a future. You can see it, and you can tell that in another year. Wow, look where we're going to be. Look at the 2 years where we're going to be.
That's exciting.
That vision is now coming together as more of a reality.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already working on products today that are going to launch, 2 years from now.
Right.
And so it becomes
not only that,
real.
The products are so freaking cool.
Yeah.
That it's exciting to bring them forward so that because people are just going to be like so happy.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well,
there's always that fear that you bring something to market that just, I remember when Kuyu rolled out a backpack and the carbon fiber frame just broke.
Yeah.
And they brought something out that a lot of people bought into, and it just didn't have enough, in my opinion. It didn't have the testing it needed to before it came to market.
Yeah.
And there was that blind spot. And then it came, and they spent years trying to overcome how that went down.
Sure.
And that's kind of a scary thing,
for sure.
You come out and you buy like $500,000 in inventory, and it's faulty. And you don't get your money back, and you have all these broken or these inoperable things or something that didn't work out. That's all kind of like...
Well, and sometimes we dog on brands that take a long time to come out with a product, like another product, the next product. But
we've been dogging on you for 3 years.
I've just learned that it makes no sense to go to market early when it's not ready.
I think that was something that Bassham and Brinker were able to bring to the table.
For sure.
Having spent so many years at Sitka, Sitka takes forever.
Yeah.
Well, for good reason. And I think that that right there was I remember early on them saying, pump the brakes, Brice. And it does take time.
I can't tell you how many times Brinker looked at me and just said, if it's not ready, don't launch it. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. And I'm like, but we need the revenue. We need a new product. We need to stay relevant. No. If it's the right product, it'll make an impact and it'll do what it's supposed to do. So,
good team.
A good team. I'm telling you, good team. That's where it's at.
I love it. All right. Well, I hope folks enjoy this podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed this. If people want to get themselves some trekking poles, some Gators, a new headlamp, use the code GRITTY.
Use the code GRITTY.
Code GRITTY. Get yourself a discount. It helps me.
Yes. We love supporting what you're doing.
Awesome. I'm thankful. Also, if you're in Bozeman or in Montana at all, but if you're cruising by, this is the showroom. And it's open to the public.
It's open to the public. We haven't really made any major announcements, but people come in all the time now. And
what's the location?
So if you're in Bozeman, it's basically Baxter and Jackrabbit on the west side of town, right by Big Sky Archery. So if you know where Big Sky Archery is at, you go that direction. We're right at the corner of Baxter and Jackrabbit there. Yeah. And if you come in, you can see a lot of Lamper's trophies up on the wall. There's a lot of his.
This is ridiculous.
This is
Lamper's. These are all his elk.
Except for a few of them. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. His garage still has at least this many.
This was like his discard pile. He was like, I don't really care about these. You can take those.
The man is impressive.
Yeah.
Like,
So we've got the Lampers Hall of Fame. We've got
Russ Meyer's the only other person I've met with just piles of one like this.
We got, Bassham's got some animals that he's going to hear.
Yep.
Got one of my brother's bears. Got my mule deer up there. We call this elk Lil Dink. This was one of Brandon's first bulls.
Hey,
It was his
archery.
second. Archery.
Yeah.
But
You'd be proud of this one.
yeah, we call it Lil Dink, and it just sits right there.
I like it. So folks can put their hands on the poles, try on the Gators.
For sure.
And you got some apparel. You got merino beanies. You got titanium spoons and
some lifestyle apparel, hats, T-shirts.
a few things like that.
Yeah, you can come in. We size people for Gators right here. Make sure they get the right size right out of the gate. They can test the poles out.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to do. We show them the headlamp all the time. And so, yeah.
I like it. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Use the code GRITTY over here at Peax. Stay gritty.